This episode is brought to you by Future Group, delivering smarter, safer, and more sustainable solutions for the built environment. From fire safety to lighting and electrical, cutting-edge EV charging, advanced security systems, regeneration works, and full-scale decarbonisation, we've got your property needs covered. Trusted by property managers across the UK. Visit future-group.uk. Future Group, leading today for a better tomorrow.
Today on Beyond Four Walls, I'm joined by someone who brings both heart and experience to the world of block management, Amy Bishoprick. With over a decade in the leasehold sector, Amy has worn many hats, managing buildings, leading teams, and now stepping into an executive director role where she continues to grow alongside the ever-evolving industry. But Amy's story goes far beyond the boardroom. She's a proud mum to 4 grown-up children, a dedicated cat lover, and someone who somehow finds time to give back in powerful ways, whether that's through mentoring young people or offering a listening ear as a former Samaritan volunteer. She'll also be diving into SheLeads, an initiative Amy introduced at Vegner, inspired by the LeanIn circles. That's all about empowering women, not just in the workplace, but in life. And from juggling family and career to leading with empathy and purpose, Amy's journey is full of insight, honesty, and inspiration. Welcome, Amy. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
So let's just start with your career in block management, if that's okay. So you've been in block management for over a decade. So what first drew you to the industry?
Well, I think like many people, it wasn't when I was growing up that I thought, I'd love to work in leasehold block management. I say this quite often, but I don't think anybody stands in front of their careers teacher and says, yeah, I want a job where people shout at me every day because they're really annoyed and I haven't actually done anything wrong. So yeah, it wasn't one of those scenarios. I used to work for a brewery, so I worked in various pubs across Hull and East Yorkshire, and I think I built quite a bit of resilience and mettle from being in that environment for many years. It was really good because it was really flexible. It meant that I could work around my children, who were young at the time, and I had 4 children in 6 years, so they're all very young around the same time, so it was a busy time. As they got a bit older, I thought, right, I don't want to run a pub, I don't want to build a career here. I'd done lots of little bits and pieces for the brewery, so I thought, let's see what's out there. I'd looked at property, I'd looked at some leases, because a lot of pubs are managed on leases, and there was a residential block manager role going in Hull, with what was Countrywide at the time, but it's part of Lambert Smith Hampton now. And I applied and I got it, and that was just, as with many people that you speak to, that's how I fell into the world of leasehold.
Yeah. What's the biggest changes, I guess, you've seen in the leasehold sector since you started?
I think in a positive way, the biggest thing is all of the use of technology that is out there these days. So whilst there's many difficult things coming in, changes in regulations, etc., I think the use of technology that is there today, in comparison to when I first started with a few sets of keys, a couple of leases and a company car, and was just sent out to get on with it, and a BlackBerry, if any listeners remember BlackBerry.
Oh, I remember my BlackBerry.
So that was my only method of communication. I could only get a signal in sort of like city centres. If I went out into the country, I couldn't call anyone. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when I look at like the systems that are used now with managing agents. Even the small one-man band managing agents have so many options at their fingertips to use technology to help them do the job. I think that's the biggest way that it's evolved in, like I say, just over a decade. We've gone from manually doing everything, invoicing, work orders, etc., to now it all being at the push of a button. So I think that's one of the biggest positives that I've seen in change.
Yeah, definitely. So with your history in hospitality, and I speak to actually a lot of people who have come from the hospitality world into block management, because it really helps, doesn't it, with your people skills at the end of the day. So what's the biggest lesson do you think you've learned from bringing that experience into the world of leasehold?
I think it's understanding that there's a customer journey. So when you're in hospitality, that is the big push. How is the customer journey from the minute they walk through a door of an establishment, or even before that, when, I mean, again, back in the day when they used to telephone to book a table for a meal or something or an event, How is that customer journey from day one? Do we communicate well? Do we give them all of the information they need? Do they know what they're paying for? Do they get the service that they're paying for? And that is very much the focus in hospitality. And I think bringing that into residential block management or any form of property management is important, because if you imagine, so some of the events that I used to deal with in hospitality were weddings, which is sometimes the most important day in people's lives. So you've got to make sure that every detail is right and they know what they're paying for and they get what they're paying for. And I think that's almost the same in block management. People's homes are their castles. It is very important. It's very emotive. Often things are costing them a lot of money. It's the biggest purchase we ever make when you buy a home. So I think understanding that customer journey has to be right and you have to be transparent. And yeah, they can't always have what they want, but you've got to explain why. So I think a lot of that does, align with the hospitality journey.
Have you any examples of, when you've successfully led a project or a team or anything in a high pressure role, and it could be back from your, the hospitality days as well. Any examples there that you can share?
I think, like a lot of people, the pandemic was a really trying time for everyone, and a time when we all had to be incredibly agile, think on our feet. When the pandemic hit, I was freshly into a role in the retirement sector. I really enjoyed it, and I absolutely loved retirement. I think it's a little bit later living, I think is the right term for it now. So yeah, I absolutely love that. So I used to work for Fairsport in their retirement division. And I just stepped up to a regional role, and then the pandemic hit. So I had teams across the north of the country, sort of from, I say the north, it was from Peterborough across to North Wales and then all the way up to Scotland. So it was quite a broad region. Yeah. And having to obviously keep people calm at that point was, I suppose that was probably the easiest in the end, because again, it was down to good communication, keeping in touch with people. But obviously the demographic of the clients meant that they were particularly vulnerable at that time. So we had to work with the customers and the staff on site, because typically a development manager in a later living site are usually your semi-retired people that have been school teachers, been in the forces, or policemen, that kind of people. So they are actually older as well, usually late 50s, typically a development manager in a site. So we had to really think about how everyone would be impacted, how to keep everyone safe, but how to keep delivering that same service. We did it quite successfully. We didn't lose any sites during that time. We managed to communicate with everyone well and keep everyone safe, thankfully. But I think that's probably been the biggest, or the time when I felt under most pressure to deliver. I think everything else, I'm typically quite a calm person. I don't really panic about things, but I think at that time there was a few sleepless nights until we got through it.
Certainly the first lockdown, I found it really, really difficult, because communication to us in terms of, like, from the government, if you like what can you do, what can't you do? Are we key workers? Can we go out? Can we work in a communal area because nobody's there, in theory? And especially, as you say, working with people who were vulnerable or they're elderly or anything like that. That must have been really, really tricky.
It was, and I think you're right. I mean, I felt for the government at the time. I have slightly different views now, I suppose, but at the time I was thinking, what would I do in their shoes? You can obviously drill into every niche sector and every niche area. There had to be these blanket rules that we abide by. But yeah, exactly that. Keeping people safe was key, but also I think the isolation, a lot of people in later life don't have a lot of family anyway. So they're not being able to see the few people that they had built relationships with was incredibly difficult. We had to close, like, the communal lounges, for example, because that was the government guidance. And I know that some of the residents did rebel and still meet up after the development manager had gone home. But at the end of the day, we manage buildings, not people. So all we could do was give the advice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was such a tricky time, wasn't it? I mean, I can't believe it was 5 years ago. But
I know. Yeah.
it was mental. My daughter was she was 4 months old when we went into lockdown. So and I was trying to, deal with being a new mum, running the
Yeah.
business, trying to figure out if I could see my mum, especially when the bubbles came in. Like, well, who
Yeah.
can be in my bubble? I'm very confused by the bubbles. And
Yeah.
it
A
was
lot
just all a
going
little
on.
bit,
Yeah.
all a little bit mental, really. But
I
yeah,
do
so
think as well, for children born during that time, obviously you missed out on things like mum and toddler groups and that kind of thing, and they are so fundamental. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost the other way on, like the older people having their bingo afternoons and their wine and cheese evenings and things. It's the same, I suppose, for youngsters that would normally be interacting with other children.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a new mum, I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks anyway, and then not being able to get out and see anyone. And then, one of the reasons why I joined an NCT group wasn't to learn how to have a baby, it was to meet people and to
Yeah,
have that connection with other families and that sort of thing. But and then you couldn't even do that, and it was just it was a very strange time,
yeah,
certainly. So if somebody was looking to start their career in property management, because I do think, as you said earlier, that, none of us started our careers with our career advisor thinking, oh, I want to be a property manager. That sounds
yeah.
like a fabulous idea. But, it is a little bit more out there now and,
Mhm.
something that, we can do. So if there was any advice that you could give somebody starting in their career, what would it be?
I think it would be not to take things personally. I think it's very easy to sit there and say that when you're hardened to the industry, I think. So I do appreciate that, and I don't mean it flippantly, but I think I remember the first time I lost a block and I remember crying, and I don't really cry. I'm not a very emotional person like that, but I was so upset because I'd done everything I could to keep that block, and they'd threatened to go a year previously and I managed to keep them for another year, but then it was down to location and things. And even though I knew it wasn't my fault, I took it really personally that
Mm,
that block was leaving. I didn't feel like they were leaving the company. I felt like they were leaving me as a person.
yeah.
It was really emotional. I mean, later on in down the line, if another resignation came in, it was just a case of, right, okay, well, we've done everything we can, let's move on. But I think that personal touch is needed to deliver the right level of service, but not taking any backlash personally, because
Mm,
often things are beyond your control. So if you know that you've done everything you can and you still someone is still upset or a client is still disgruntled, not taking it personally is probably the key thing. I think that resilience, like I said, that I'd already built up in another industry is really key. So I think for people, say graduates or people coming into the industry who haven't had that experience, I think it can be overwhelming. So I would
mm,
suggest that trying to build some resilience or understanding that it's not personal to you, it's the situation, is the
yeah.
best advice I could give.
Yeah, and I think I've said this on another podcast actually, but even what 19-ish, something like that, years in now, I still take everything really personally, but I'm a little bit better at picking myself up now.
Yeah,
So it still hits me exactly the same way as it hit me the first time if something happens because to do this job you are very empathetic and compassionate and you want to do your best and you want to achieve the results for the client that you've promised them and if that can't be done and sometimes a resignation comes along because somebody is £5 cheaper than you are
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
and it's absolutely nothing to do with you and but yeah I'm better at picking myself back up quicker now than I
yeah,
than I was before. Um, I think I've just accepted as well that, I am who I am and I can't change the fact that I do take things personally.
yeah.
But building that resilience has been a big part of my journey. Not sure how you
Definitely. And
feel.
yeah, no, I agree. And I think it does come with experience. You have to have the knocks to be able to see, first of all, how do you deal with them? Then you've got that self-awareness. If you know you are an emotional person or you know that you will continue to take it personally and need time to process it and deal with it, it's just setting yourself up to manage that, I think. So yeah, I'm not saying remove all emotion from what you do, because like I said, that's very much needed to be able to deliver a good service. But I
Mm,
think as well, that's not just on the individual, that's on the organisations and the culture that
I
people work
agree.
in. I think it's really important to build that culture of, right, okay, let's sit down and assess what's gone wrong. We've just done a big project. It's ongoing now. It's BAU, I suppose, but we've been looking at risk in HML where I am currently, but also going back and looking at blocks that we have lost and why have we lost them. We're not pointing fingers at anyone and saying, right, it's down to you. So you clearly you're the problem here. We're just looking
Mm,
at whether there's any patterns, the ongoing factors, and just making sure it doesn't happen again. That's the thing, just learning lessons from it. So
yeah.
I think that is important to have a strong culture in the organisations, in the industry, whether you're a small independent or one of the larger beasts of managing agents, just making sure that culture isn't lost to make sure that people feel supported is really important.
Definitely. Which brings me on nicely to my next questions, actually, about
Okay.
the SheLeads initiative.
Yes.
Tell me about this. What is it? Explain.
So SheLeads is so it's my baby, I suppose. I'm very protective of it. I know that there are other organisations in the industry for women, but when I came into HML, after many years of being the only woman in the room sometimes, or being described as an aggressive woman,
Oh,
that kind of thing. In the past, I've had those sorts of comments. So I thought I'll go into HML, see how the land lies there, see what sort of female role models there are. So when I joined there about 18 months ago, we had a female CEO who had just been appointed at that point, worked her way up through the business, other female directors, very strong women in the industry. And I thought, in the business, compared to other areas of the industry. And I thought, right, this is great. This is a really good basis for making sure that we let every female know in the company that they are empowered to be whatever they want to be. And you know what? If they are happy in the role that they are in, if they want to be an administrator or what we call property management assistants or anything like that, that's absolutely fine as long as they know that they're empowered to be what they want to be. So I started having a look around and see what there was out there, whether there was already any initiatives that we could adopt. Let's not reinvent the wheel if we don't need to. And found LeanIn, which is very much an American organisation. I had heard of it previously from a company that I worked for briefly, and I thought, right, I'll see what this is all about, see if there's any resources that we can use. And basically, like I say, it's an American initiative, but the LeanIn organisation gets you to put together circles, so circles of women who can lean in on each other for support, whether that is for something like a very specific situation or a broader issue such as the gender pay gap. So I thought this would be ideal because we have lots of women within Vegner Group, not just HML, but the wider group, who we could get on board with this. And it will be really good for people to interact and lean in on each other and ask those questions that they maybe don't want to ask in a wider group. So I approached our HR department because we have a scheme where you can put forward big ideas. And I put it forward and said, do you think this is something we could run with? And they were really supportive and said, absolutely, any time or resources that you need, if you're happy to spearhead it, we're happy to support you with it. And it went from there, really. So we now have 3 circles, which each contain between 7 and 9 women. I think we cap it at 9 so that there isn't too many. They meet on a bi-monthly basis via Teams or not in person as yet because everyone is all over the country. So we do it via Teams at the moment, but ideally we'd like to get to a point where we are getting everyone in a room together and we look at different topics. So last month, February, the topic we looked at was how women are impacted financially by being women. So we looked at things like obviously taking career breaks to have children, how much extra we pay for things like the pink tax. So one of the examples was if I go to buy a razor from the shop, because it's pink, because it's in a feminine packaging, it's usually £3 or £4 more expensive than the male equivalent, that kind of thing. And other factors, there's many factors that mean that by the time women sort of get to their 50s, they are much more financially impacted, not just by the gender pay gap, but lots of other things as well. So that's the kind of topics that we look at. We also have one-off sessions. So for International Women's Day, we did a quiz. We did open that up to the entire group. So we had men attending as well. We don't have man bashing sessions, which is what I think some people may perceive it as. And it was really well attended. We had a clear winner, which was good. And all of the questions were around women in history, women in the world that had achieved, questions around what women were and weren't allowed to do. As an example, you might find this interesting, up until 1975, women were not allowed to get a bank account in their own name without their father or their husband signing off on it. So that was the sort of questions that we had in there, like what year were women allowed bank accounts? So yeah, we explore all sorts of things, but mainly it's about empowering women to be what they want to be. And if they want to progress in their career and they need a female mentor, we have people of all levels on the calls, in the circles, so they can explore that. They can ask for an individual mentor, etc. And it's really building.
That is really amazing. I did know that I didn't know the exact year, but I knew it was sort of 70s, which, I was born in 83, so that just completely baffles me. That, my mum grew up in an era where her father or my dad or whatever had to, sign off on stuff for her. How crazy is that?
Exactly.
But yeah, and I like that you said actually that this isn't about man bashing because, everything that I do for sort of women in residential property and, supporting women in the industry and stuff, you do get that, that aggressive turn that you said earlier as well,
Yeah.
you just man bashing and you just don't like men. Well, no, it's not about that. Yeah, as you say, we want to be seen that we want to be equal. We want, we're very good at what we do,
Yeah.
and we don't want to be inferior to anybody. We just want to be the same. We don't want to get rid
Exactly.
of men. We just want to have the same rights.
Yeah,
So,
definitely not. I think there is a big difference between equality and feminism, extreme feminism.
mm,
And we don't, it's not something that we encourage. Obviously, if somebody was an out and proud feminist and wanted to be a part of a circle and share their views, it's a completely safe space to do so. But that is not something that we're trying to push forward. We don't have an agenda for anything like that.
mm.
Yes, that's exactly what it is, equality. And yeah, we absolutely need men. We definitely do. And I have a great, strong team of men that support me in doing what I do. And I'm fully aware of that and definitely do need them. But I do want women to be able to have a voice and understand that they can get to wherever they want to be.
Well, it sounds amazing what you're doing, and congratulations for doing it and for bringing it into the industry, and hopefully you can take it wider than just HML eventually. That'd be great.
Definitely, yeah, it's definitely scalable. The main thing being that some of the women that have joined the circle have now grown in confidence and are running their own circles. So that's the
Great.
purpose, really. That's how I intend it to scale. So
Mm.
yes, it's open right across Vegner. So the Beehive guys get involved as well, and the other brands. And yeah, hopefully it's something that we can just keep cascading.
Oh, that'd be incredible if you could. But so what have there been any breakthroughs with what you're doing through the sessions? Or I mean, you just said then that, people who were part of a circle and now running a circle, has
Yeah.
there been anything or any initiatives that have come out of it that you can share?
Yeah, so like I said, the scaling up has been the key thing, really. People getting more confidence and saying, actually, I'd like to support other people. We've got a lady who's in one of our circles who's put herself forward for higher qualifications in the area that she works and has now achieved
Mm.
those. So, and the first people she shared it with was us, which was really nice. And that's a really positive thing. You see friendships growing within the circles because sometimes I think you can get in your own little division or your own team and very much not spread out wider. So we've got people across different parts of the company liaising with each other and actually becoming friends, which is probably one of the biggest positives as far as I can see. We're in conversations with one of our colleagues who is going to start a similar initiative called Lead with Colour. And
Okay.
he's going to run that because we do have a very diverse team. So he's going to run something very similar for people of colour, which I think is really
Mm,
positive. That's a real
definitely.
positive. I think the idea's been in fruition for some time, but then seeing the positivity that's come out of SheLeads, he thought, right, now's the time to pull the trigger on it, which is
Mm.
really, really positive, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's incredible. As you say, it will just get bigger. And people have, they'll join these circles and then they'll have their own ideas and be able to do it in whatever way they feel comfortable doing. It sounds brilliant. But do you think the property industry is doing enough to support women in leadership roles?
I think again it goes back to the individual companies and their own culture and how they build that culture. I mean, for example, like I say, at Vegner, we've got a female CEO. Obviously, I'm on the SLT. There's another female executive director on the SLT, which is all very positive, and we're very transparent. We talk to everyone across the company to make sure that we are pushing that conversation. Our CEO is very open about how she feels that she's got to that position. We've got a specific session with her. So that culture is really positive. I think across the wider industry, I think there is definitely recognition for women. I've noticed at more seminars that I'm attending that there are more females on the panel, which is really good
Mm.
to see. I think actually last year we had an all-female panel at one of the conferences, which was really positive. So I think there is recognition that women do well in this industry. When I look across teams that I've worked with in the past and teams that I work with now, I think from a property manager level, we're typically very female heavy. There's often, I mean, I think one of our teams has got one single male in the property management team, and then everyone else is female. I think he actually quite likes that. I think he's he's quite happy in that team. He gets looked after. I think there is support across the industry at that property manager level, whether that is translating into propelling women into higher positions and promotions. But I don't think there's like a really toxic negativity towards women where there maybe was in the past, maybe even before you or I joined the industry. When I think back to when I did join, there was quite a lot of, I would deal with quite a lot of sort of like surveying firms that were all very male dominated. I would get invited to golf days, for example, rather than just that kind of thing. And I think that has died off, thankfully. I don't think that is the case anymore. We're seeing female surveyors coming up, which is a real positive. So I think there probably is more that could be done, but I don't think it's a toxic issue across the industry, not from my perspective anyway.
No, it's definitely going in the right direction. And I think, I was at that seminar, I think, when it was predominantly female. There may have been like one guy on there. I can't remember the exact thing, but I am noticing that there are more sort of female speakers and everything being on the panels and doing their own presentations and stuff. So yeah, it's great. But moving on to family and work life and work life balance and all that kind of stuff. Now I hate the question, how do you balance your career with parenting? That is like the worst question ever. But I think it's also important to share, you've got grown-up children, I've got a small child, we're both career women. I'm personally incredibly ambitious, always have been. That shouldn't stop just because I've had a child. And as much as, and of course I adore her and I want to be the best mum to her, but I also want to show her that mummy works very hard and this is why you have the life that you have and, all of that kind of stuff. So how did you find, you said you had 4 children under 6 at one point, is that?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you just blew my mind just talking about that. But how did you find it, and how was it all for you?
I think when I look back now, I do think, how did I do it? But I was much younger then, so I had a lot more energy when they were younger. So if I was to attempt it now, I think it'd be, despite the fact that everything's progressed so much and there's a lot more working from home and that kind of thing, I think I would find it difficult just from an energy perspective. I'm not naturally an organised person, but I had to be. I had to be very organised with 4 young children. I was office based, so I was in the office every day. The positive was I have a really strong support network. So my dad actually lives with me. He lives in an annex at the back of our property. And that has really helped over the years because he's retired now. So he's picked up school runs, he's dropped off at breakfast club, that kind of thing, when I've had to work away, which I do quite often. Trying to battle down the mum guilt was a big thing. And I think that is it, or dad guilt, the parent guilt. I think it is a big thing, just making sure that we always all had Sunday lunch together. Even now, when they're older, we still try and eat together on a weekend, spend that quality time together, because they've got their own lives, their jobs, their university, that kind of thing now. But we do try and spend that time together to make sure that we still have family time. And yeah, I think battling down that mum guilt, not feeling bad because I had an AGM, so I didn't manage to do bedtime that night, but making sure that I did the next night, that kind of thing. That was the big internal tussle, I think, for myself, making sure that I did pour a lot into work. And there were times when I maybe could have done more at home. And then other times, there was times where there was a lot going on at home and I maybe neglected work slightly. But making sure that everything got enough, just enough, was probably the best way. All of the kids have got really strong work ethics now. So I think that is probably key. From mum being away for a few days in the week, they have had to be independent from younger ages probably. And obviously dad was around, my dad was around, my sisters, live nearby. So they were a support network as well. Go and ask your auntie if mum's not around. And they're very close as well, the kids. So I think that helps. That has helped me not being there as the first port of call always. They've supported each other as well. So that could be flipped around and looked upon negatively, I suppose, but I see it as a positive, and we have a really good, strong relationship. So I don't think it's damaged them in any way that I've not always been here 24/7, not being that stay-at-home mum or even a working from home mum. In fact, I think by the time we were allowed out in the pandemic, they were like, yeah, go on, mum, you go away for a week and we'll see you at the weekend.
Yeah, my mum.
Like, why are you here? Yeah, why are you here nagging me and making me do things? So yeah, I think it is that you have to have that internal battle with yourself about what is important. But I think I always had in my head as well that it would come a point when they were all off doing their own thing, because I can go days without seeing the kids. I could be working from home all week and still not see them because they're off doing their own thing. And I knew that day would come, and I didn't want to then be, right, I'll go find an entry level role and I'll start at this age. I'm glad that I didn't, because now I am where I am and I'm in a much better position than I would have been if I'd have waited and just sat back and done, like I said, more flexible, lower level roles whilst they were young, because then they'd have been off having their own lives, as they absolutely should.
Yeah.
And I would have still been trying to find my own way. So I'm glad that I did it this way.
Do you know what? I couldn't agree with you more. And thank you for sharing that and being so honest as well, because you know, I struggle with the mum guilt every day. And it's something that I battle with constantly. And I think for me, you know, I do everything with my daughter's, anything she needs, it's always in my mind, you know, everything I do is for her. But it has to be for you as well, you know, it doesn't, you know, as you say, they're going to grow up, they're going to have their own lives. You know, what am I going to do at that point? And would she rather have a happy mum and a successful mum, or would she rather have somebody who just hates life because I didn't get what I wanted out of life either? So, you know, and as you say, it makes them independent as well. So, but yeah, thank you for sharing that so honestly. I really appreciate it.
No, that's fine. And I also appreciate that isn't for everyone, and that if everyone isn't ambitious and is happy to be at home all the time and be in that full-time mum role, then good on them. Absolutely. That's what I mean. I'm all about empowering people to be what they want to be, or be the parent that they want to be. But just for me, it wouldn't have been enough. I don't think. Being a parent is intense, and they're always on my mind, even now at their big ages, in their 20s. I'm still thinking, how will that impact them? They do very much factor into my schedule, like you say, because I think, oh, I'd like to be there for that, or they can do that one independently, or whatever it may be. But it wouldn't have been enough as they got older and more independent. And I would not have wanted to be sort of like a clingy mum, or someone who's saying to them, no, stay home with me, don't go out with your friends, don't do this. And so having other things to occupy me has been good for all of us, I think, and good for our relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. And as I said, you know, we as parents we do everything with them in mind. You know, they're gonna grow up, and they're, you know, in a few years, my daughter's 5.5. She's 6 in October. You know, in 4 years' time, she's not going to give a damn if where I am, because she's going to want to be with her friends. So, you know, she's even getting to that point now where she's like, "Oh, my mum, go away! I'm playing with such and such friend." You know.
They're so busy. They have so much in their lives, even at that young age, that you don't want to hold that back.
Definitely not. So talk to me about your volunteering. So you've worked with the Samaritans.
Yep.
And you work with a mentor charity. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've always done some forms of charity work. So when I worked for a brewery, we had incentives every year to work with different charities. We used to have like charity week, and we'd put on different events in the pubs and raise money for different charities, local charities. We did some work for the Samaritans. We did a charity week for the Samaritans, raised some money for them. They came in and talked to us about what they do, what the money could do for them, how they would use it, etc. And I thought, this is really, this is really interesting. And I'd gone home and I was actually talking to my dad about it and said, oh, the Samaritans have been, etc. And he said, I rang the Samaritans once. And I was a bit like, oh, I didn't realise. I didn't, obviously, when I was much younger, clearly. And he said they were really good. They were really helpful. He'd been struggling with his mental health. He didn't feel like he could talk to any of his friends about it because, I mean, he was born in the 50s. So this was probably the 80s, I think, that he'd reached out to the Samaritans. And it wasn't the time when you men weren't encouraged to talk then. It was man up was probably very much the phrase. And he'd rang the Samaritans. He said he'd had a really good chat with somebody about how he was feeling, about the pressures he felt he was under. I think he'd just been made redundant from work and he was feeling a bit sort of like a failure. And they'd really supported him. And he'd never disclosed that to me before. We'd never spoken in depth about anything like that, really. And talking to him just made me think, I want to give something back. I want to give something more back to them and maybe help somebody else's dad. Because for all I know, my dad might not be here now if he hadn't spoken to that Samaritan.
Yeah.
So I went to my local branch, asked if there was anything I could do. And within literally weeks, I'd been trained as a Samaritan listening volunteer, which is literally on the telephones talking to people who are typically suicidal, but also just struggling with their mental health. And then I got involved in all sorts of other things, fundraising, outreach. I started delivering training for them. And it easily could have been a full-time job. There was so much that you could do and so much help that you could give. So I think I was with them for just over 5 years, and I probably did 10 different roles while I was there, helping with different areas of the branch. Really, really interesting. I learned so much there. I became a property manager whilst I was a Samaritan. I think that definitely helps. That learned empathy, because I'm not particularly naturally empathic, so having that learned empathy was really important. And yeah, lots of even just things like attending board meetings, hearing about how the budgets were put together, that kind of thing, all of that helped with me becoming a property manager as well. But the feeling of giving something back was the most important. So I left the Samaritans because I moved away from the branch. I literally used to live across the road from it, so it was really convenient with the kids. When the kids were younger, I could pop backwards and forwards. And I left there with the intention of going back at some point, or at least giving to a different charity. I helped out with a couple of sort of church-run property, like almshouses, charities, on and off for a little while after that, but it didn't really have the same bite. And then a couple of years ago, I saw an advert on LinkedIn for a chief operating officer for an organisation that was called Teenage Helpline at the time.
Okay.
And basically, it was set up by a young man who, when he was only 14, who was struggling with lots of things in his life, his sexuality being one of them. And he felt like he didn't have people that he could talk to that understood what he was going through or that were the same age as him. So every charity he reached out to, he ended up speaking to somebody who was older. And he was looking for people his own age that may be able to relate to what he was going through at 14. And there wasn't anybody out there. So he set up Teenage Helpline, which was basically a group of young volunteers, so people between the ages of 16 and 25, who provide peer-to-peer mentor support to young people. So obviously I didn't fit into that age bracket, but what they said was they felt like they needed somebody a bit older with broader experience. Their board typically was made up of people that were older, because those young people themselves, they were a bit older by then, they'd moved on a few years, but still early 20s, were looking for people with wider experience to help them. So I got involved at a board level, and that has been really interesting. It's recently rebranded to Youth for Youth because we feel that's a better message. 2 of my children are actually now peer mentors. And have got involved as well, because I drag them into everything that I do. But it's just really positive. It's growing. It's on a really positive trajectory, and providing peer-to-peer mentoring is so important because young people then feel like they're being understood by another young person. So yeah, it's really, really rewarding. So I think I'll probably be involved in a charity at some point for the rest of my life, because it's not an altruistic thing. I don't even think altruism really exists, because I do get such a good feeling from it when we've had a positive experience, or when we get contact back from a mentee who has said, actually, this has really helped me talking to this mentor. And the mentors themselves, they get a really good experience out of it. So it's a good feeling to be involved in something so worthwhile.
Well, it must be incredibly rewarding, because young people are, I'm not sure if you've watched Adolescence on Netflix. Oh my gosh, I mean, I was crying within about 5 minutes, and didn't stop for all 4 episodes. But young people are so, they're so focused on what we wouldn't even consider to be something that a different colored heart emoji or something. Just it blew my mind to think that this what these young people and what they're exposed to, and sort of the Andrew Tates of the world and that sort of thing, and what these young people are going through. And so yeah, it must be incredibly rewarding for you to be involved in that. But what have you taken from that experience? Has it shaped you in a particular way?
Yeah, definitely. I think having had teenagers around for quite a number of years, I felt like I was really equipped to go in and support them, because I thought I've probably dealt with everything that could happen, having 4 teenagers in the house, plus their friends, plus their partners, etc. I think we've probably dealt with every experience, but really haven't. It's really opened up to my eyes, like you said, to the pressures that young people are under. I think I've been really lucky with my 4. We haven't had any major issues, touch wood, because they are very Like I said, they support each other. They're all very confident. They're all very almost sure of themselves in lots of ways. They've got plans for the future. They know what they want. They've got direction, and they don't, thankfully, put too much on what other people think of them. They're not wanting to be Instagram influencers or have a need to be liked in that way. But yeah, I think some of the experiences that I've seen from the cases that have come into Youth for Youth have really even opened up my eyes to the pressures that young people are under. And I think I've said it flippantly in the past, sort of like, oh, I'm glad there wasn't such a thing as Facebook when I was younger, else I'd have been in trouble with my mum if she'd have seen what I got up to, and I'd have been tagged in things and things like that. But it goes beyond that. Like you say, it's the hidden messages, or it's the feeling of people not liking you, or how you deal with it, I think. And I think to some extent we experience that maybe as well, in a way of sort of like, if I put something on LinkedIn and I get lots of people liking it or commenting on it, I think, oh yeah, that's great. It's almost like validation. So, and I'm quite a confident person and I don't need that validation. But I think if you're a young person who is maybe grappling with things like your sexuality or body consciousness or that kind of thing, I just think how important that must be to them to be validated. Or somebody putting something negative. It's your formative years. It's the time when you become who you're going to be for the rest of your life. And I think it's no wonder so many people in their 20s are in therapy, because the pressure that they're under in those situations it's massive, really massive. So yeah, my eyes have very much been opened up to those sorts of pressures whilst working with Youth for Youth, definitely.
Oh, well, if I'm not sure if you know, but I work with the Holly Gazzard Trust, and they do a
Yes.
lot of educational things around like toxic masculinity. Well, they call it reframing masculinity, which is an incredible course that they offer into schools. And if there's anything that the trust can do in that respect, and and vice versa, then yeah, do let us know. Just please do reach out.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a good collaboration.
Yeah. So talk to me about how you recharge with everything that you've got going on. I talk a lot about well-being. I talk about burnout all the time. You obviously are clearly very, very busy, as we all are. But how do you recharge? How do you find that time to do it?
I always make sure that I have time set aside. So I went through, and I think we've all probably done this. I started a new relationship a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden, every weekend I was busy. We'd be out with my partner's friends, or we'd be doing something with my friends. And like you do when you're starting a new relationship and you're building those friendship circles and you're getting to know each other. And after about 3 months, I was just a bit like, I can't do this. My weekends are the time that I need to, even just doing things like catching up on things in the house, like reorganizing the fridge and that kind of thing. It gives you a sense of sort of calm and well-being, I think, when you've got things organized. And I just didn't have time for any of that. And that was the moment where I sort of said to myself, right, enough's enough. Just don't book anything for the next few weeks. Have a few weekends to relax and recharge. Like I say, spending time with the kids, because I don't get time to in the week. We usually try and put some time aside as the weather's getting nicer now. We're sort of planning barbecues and things. So whilst that is still busy and you've still got to do all the prep and then all the cleaning up, it's more relaxed. And that is typically how I relax. I'm not really a go for a long walk and be at one with nature type person, or even sort of things like spa days and things like that. That typical relaxation doesn't really work for me. It can make me more tense, if anything. So just doing the things that I enjoy. I read quite a lot for pleasure. So when I'm away in the week, if I'm working somewhere else in the country, because obviously I'm up right in the north of the country, I'm on the East Coast, and a lot of the offices that I work with are down in the south. So I do spend quite a lot of time away. But after I've sort of like wrapped up work for the evening, I'll just sit and read in a bar in a hotel or something, or even just in the room, that kind of thing, just to sort of switch off, listen to a lot of podcasts like yours, like I said at the beginning. And so even though that is sort of still work related, yeah, that still gives me downtime, because I can just sort of switch off and let it wash over me. And I do spend a lot of time in the car, because I typically, unless I'm going directly into central London, I will drive to wherever I'm going. My poor car is feeling the benefit of that. But that is quite a bit of downtime for me as well. I really missed that in the pandemic, because I didn't have a commute at all. I was literally just coming out of my home office and into the kitchen. So that is a way that I relax as well. People are a bit like, oh, the travel you do, I couldn't do it, but that's my sort of relax time. That's where I process what I've gone through in the day, or if I'm heading somewhere, I process what I've got to deal with when I get there, and that is one of the ways that I relax as well.
Yeah, and it helps you decompress on the way home as well, doesn't it? Like, if
Definitely.
you've had a really tense day, having an hour or so's drive, I did it. I live in Bristol, but I worked in Cheltenham every day for 4 years. And everyone's like, oh, how could you do that commute every day? And, it wasn't actually that bad, to be fair.
No.
Getting across the other side of Bristol took longer randomly because
Yeah.
of all the traffic.
Exactly.
But I quite liked it because by the time I got home, managed to sort of think about calmly everything that had happened during the day, and I should say listen to a podcast or just listen to some music or audiobook or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm big on reading as well. I love just sitting and reading. And as you say, now the weather's getting nice, so you can just sit in the garden or something and and
Yeah.
and chill with a glass of wine or something like that, or a cup of
Yeah,
tea.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Whatever works. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm not a big drinker, as I've got older. It just I can't handle it like I used to.
Yeah, I'm with you
But
on
yeah,
that.
I know what you mean. Just whatever your choice of beverage is, just having that moment. I think that's probably the best sort of mindfulness that you can have. But even things like just going back to like SheLeads, being having a circle meeting, that can be quite relaxing because you can sit back and you're not under pressure to be the one who's doing the speaking or the one who is, because often if you're leading a meeting, that is quite stressful, I find. It can be because you don't know how other people are going to react to you. You don't know what they're going to ask you. You've got to be switched on the entire time. Whereas in the circle meetings, it flows very well. Everybody's got an opinion. You're not the focus. So that kind of thing is nice.
So, as we finish off, can
Mhm.
you tell me something that people don't often see about being in a leadership role in property management?
Probably quite a few things, isn't there? I think people maybe underestimate, certainly from my perspective, how much you do understand what they're going through. I think some property managers, maybe, who are dealing with stressful situations, think that people in leadership roles, so not necessarily their line manager, but maybe once you start getting to director level and beyond, think that we've almost forgotten what it's like
Mm.
to be in their shoes, and that is absolutely not the case at all.
We never forget.
Never forget it. It's ingrained on your mind. And
Yeah.
I think there's almost this sort of like ivory tower perspective that, well, you're up there, you're not having to deal with people like that day to day. But I think the key thing is that I've earned my stripes. I've been out
Mm.
there. I've been at AGMs. I have dealt with it, and I do try and get that across. For example, we had you might have seen in the news a few weeks ago there was a huge, well, there was two sinkholes in a little village in Surrey, and one of the properties that our Reigate office manages was literally on the edge of the sinkhole. So the property management team were, I mean, they went above and beyond. They really did do well. And they were arranging alternative accommodation or supporting in the arranging of alternative accommodation. They were reaching out to the local authority for things like food parcels and just making sure that everyone was okay. Basically, the communication was terrific. But I went down to the office and just popped my head in and went and had a chat with them and was like, right, is there anything you need? How are you getting on? Tell me what you're doing. How's it going? Just to make sure that they knew that I understood how stressful it was. And it was great to see them all grouping together and helping each other and making sure it happened. Didn't just leave it to the property manager and go, oh, I'm glad that's not my property, and walk away. They were all very much working together. But I think just being present and making them understand that I was there if they needed anything. I mean, they were
Mm.
all over it. They didn't need me, but being there, because I think
Yeah.
that is a barrier that I think some people in leadership roles, and I understand in bigger organizations. So like I said, I used to work for Firstport, and there is no way that, say, for example, the ops director would have turned up in that moment and said, is there anything you want me to do? Because the teams were so much bigger, there was so much more pressure. And I understand to a certain degree, but then when I think back, I think how much positive impact it would have made if they had have done,
Yeah.
if they had have turned up. So I think just people underestimate how much we do care. Definitely, certainly from my perspective, I still do care. And it does immediately cast me back to when I was a property manager dealing with big
Yeah.
issues.
And it's funny, isn't it, how you can immediately sort of just switch back into that role and
Yep,
you just think, right, you go into that crisis management part of your brain that's like riding a bike kind of thing. You
yep,
just you just suddenly know how to do it all again.
exactly. It's
And
just
you don't
muscle
even think
memory,
about it.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It just all comes back and you think, right, has this been done? Has that been done? Like I said, they'd done everything. They'd ticked every box on an imaginary checklist. But it was, it's really good. And I do enjoy it. I went to a meeting a few weeks ago. Well, it was the beginning of the year now, actually. Time's flying. And it was quite manic. It was a group of leaseholders who didn't understand why they were having to pay for things. And it was quite high pressured. And I really enjoyed it. I came out of it thinking, oh, I've missed that. Not that I want to do it every day, but yeah,
No.
it was nice to just keep my hand in.
Saying that, if you could go back 10 years and give yourself a piece of advice, and other than the not taking it personally advice you said
Yeah,
earlier,
yeah.
what would it be?
It would probably be don't give up because it does get better and there is technology coming to make life easier and things will improve because I think probably 10 years ago I was 3 years into my career and probably thinking, is this for me? And I think just after that I was promoted and that really helped because I was getting to the point where I was thinking, I am sight blind to this portfolio that I'm looking after. I'm starting to not care as much as I used to. I think it very much has a shelf life, block management, of actually managing blocks. For ambitious people or people who can offer more, it definitely does have a shelf life. And I think 10 years ago, yeah, definitely I would have been at the point where I was thinking, is this actually what I want to do for the rest of my life? I don't want to manage these blocks for the rest of my life. And then I was promoted, I moved on and thankfully I stuck at it. But that would be what I'd say to me 10 years ago. Just keep at it because there is more out there. The better things are coming.
Great advice. And as we finish off, anything you want to add?
No, I think we've covered lots of areas, haven't we? I just think that if there is anybody out there thinking about entering into block management, even from another industry, or anybody who is thinking of leaving block management because things aren't as you want them to be, then just find me on LinkedIn, reach out and let's have a chat about it because I think it might be the company that you're working for, it might be the blocks that you're managing, it could be anything. And if you enjoy some of it, I think you can, and you stick at it, I think you will find that it's getting better.
Well, thank you so much. I'll put your LinkedIn profile into the show notes. If people want to click there, they can reach out to you.
Lovely. Thank you. It's been great talking to you. Thanks, Jodie.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my latest podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Or you can contact me on jodie@jodiefraser.com. For more content and updates, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favourite platforms. Thank you once again for listening. Until next time, take care.